Picture this. You're sitting at your desk, lost in the daily grind, when suddenly your phone rings. The name on the screen makes your heart skip a beat. Ben, your brother gone for years, silenced by a tragedy that shattered your family into 1,000 pieces. You hesitate but pick up, and the voice on the other end is filled with a familiar pain, distant yet close. He wants to meet, and you have no idea what to expect. It's a reunion marked by heavy silences and searching glances, each trying to find traces of who you used to be. Childhood memories blend with the harsh reality of losses never fully healed. Every word feels like a small battle against the weight of years apart. Walking through places that once brought joy, everything now seems smaller, wrapped in a nostalgia that cuts deep. Between quiet laughs and unexpected tears, the past resurfaces with a force neither of you saw coming. As they relive old memories and visit familiar places, tough questions arise and buried secrets threaten to break the fragile peace. A connection starts to rebuild, but every step towards reconciliation seems to pull on a thread, could unravel everything again. In the end, what will remain when all the truths come out? A renewed bond or an insurmountable divide? The soft hum of my computer filled the silence of my office. Familiar clutter of papers and old coffee cups, strange comfort in my otherwise monotonous routine. As I sifted through emails, the sudden buzz of my phone made me jump. Glanced down at the screen, my heart racing at the name glowing back at me, Ben. It had been years since I last heard from him, years filled with unanswered questions and an aching silence that seemed to stretch on forever. I felt a rush of emotions, shock, nostalgia, and an unexpected anticipation. Taking a deep breath, I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. What could he possibly want? Memories surged through my mind, flashes of laughter and warmth mingled with shadows of pain and loss. I quickly pressed the green button. Hello? My voice felt foreign even to me, tremulous and uncertain. Sarah, he said, his voice heavy with a mix of sorrow and longing. It's me. Ben, I whispered, the name hanging in the air, a fragile thread connecting us after all this time. I didn't expect to hear from you. I know, he replied, a long pause stretching between us. I could almost hear the weight of his thoughts. I need to talk to you, face to face. Is everything okay? Questions slipped out before I could stop myself. But I needed to know if he was safe. I don't know how to explain it all right now, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Can we meet at the park? You remember the one? My heart sank at the thought of the old park, a place that was once a sanctuary for us, now tainted with bittersweet memories. Yeah, I remember. I forced myself to sound steady. What time? Can we say 3 o'clock? Sure. After hanging up, I sat in silence, my mind racing. Park. It felt like a lifetime since I had walked those familiar paths. Yet the memories flooded back. Our laughter, our secrets, the summer afternoons spent under the old oak tree. But it also reminded me of the tragedy that tore us apart, the loss that lingered like a ghost. As the clock ticked closer to 3, I found myself fidgeting, my palms sweaty as I tried to calm the storm of emotions brewing inside me. I arrived early, pacing along the worn path, my eyes scanning the trees that stood sentinel over our childhood. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, mingling with the bittersweet taste of nostalgia. When I finally saw him, my heart skipped a beat. Ben stood there, looking older, warier, but still so undeniably my brother. His dark hair was disheveled, and he wore a jacket that hung loosely on his frame. He seemed like a shadow of the boy I once knew. Hey, I said softly as we approached each other, the distance between us feeling like an insurmountable chasm. Hey, he replied, a nervous smile tugging at his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes, which were clouded with unspoken words. We stood there for a moment, the silence stretching uncomfortably. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of years of separation hanging heavily between us. Let's sit, I suggested, gesturing toward a nearby bench. As we settled down, I stole a glance at him. So, it's been a while, I said, trying to break the ice. Yeah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've thought about reaching out so many times, but I didn't know how. I get it, I replied, the ache of understanding threading through my words. I didn't know how to reach you either. He looked away, his gaze fixed on the ground. I've been carrying so much pain, Sarah. I just thought it would be easier to bear it alone. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "You're not alone anymore, Ben. I want to help you carry it." He turned to me then, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "There's so much I need to say, but I'm afraid." "Whatever it is, you can tell me," I urged, my heart aching for him. "I'm here." Ben took a deep breath, the weight of his unspoken words hanging in the air between us. As the shadows of the trees danced around us, I realized that this moment was just the beginning of unraveling the tangled threads of our past. The air was thick with tension as I approached the park, the place where so many of my childhood memories were forged. Each step felt like a journey through time. Faint sound of laughter from our past echoing in my mind, juxtaposed with the heavy silence that now enveloped me. I spotted Ben sitting on one of the old benches, his figure alone against the backdrop of the green expanse we once roamed freely. My heart raced. It had been years since we had seen each other. "Hey," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper as I took a seat beside him. The sun filtered through the branches above, casting dappled shadows that danced around us, yet it felt as if the light barely reached the depths of my heart. "Hey," he replied, tone subdued. He looked older, warier, and I couldn't help but wonder if I mirrored his burden. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us searching each other's faces as if trying to unearth the remnants of our childhood selves. "How have you been?" I finally asked, breaking the silence that felt both comforting and suffocating. "I've been surviving," he said, a ghost of a smile flickering across his lips. "You know how it is." I nodded, but my mind was racing. Would we really be able to talk about everything that had happened? The years of separation felt like a chasm we needed to cross, yet the memories of our shared past loomed like dark clouds above us. "Do you remember that summer when we built that treehouse?" I ventured, hoping to ignite a spark of warmth. Ben chuckled softly, his eyes lighting up momentarily. "Yeah, and we almost fell out twice because you insisted on using those rickety old boards." "Hey, I thought we were being resourceful." I shot back, my heart lifting just a little, but as quickly as the laughter rose, it vanished, leaving behind the weight of unspoken word. "Sarah." Ben's voice turned serious, pulling me back to the present. "I didn't just call you to reminisce." I swallowed hard, feeling the air thicken once more. "What is it, then?" "I need to talk to you about something important." He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground. "Something I've carried for a long time." A chill ran down my spine. "Is it about the accident?" He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and confusion. "Yes, but it's more than that. It's about us and what happened after." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Ben, you know I've carried my own guilt. I couldn't save them. I couldn't protect our family." His expression softened, and I could see the weight of my words landing on him. "I thought I was the only one who felt that way. I ran away, Sarah. I thought distancing myself would help, but it only made things worse." "Worse how?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I tried to forget, to escape the pain," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I couldn't. I had to face it, and I didn't know how." I could hear the tremor in his voice, the regret that clung to each word. "You're here now, aren't you? We can face it together," I said, attempting to offer him comfort, though I wasn't sure how to comfort myself. He shook his head slowly, a shadow passing over his features. "There's something else, Sarah. Something I haven't told you. I was involved in a support group after everything happened. I thought it would help me cope." My heart sank. "Ben, why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to drag you into my mess," he replied, his voice breaking. "I wanted to protect you from the pain I was feeling, but I only ended up isolating us both. Ben, you're my brother. We're supposed to share this burden, not carry it alone," I said, my voice rising slightly in frustration. "I know that now," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I still have things I haven't shared. Things that might change everything between us." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and I felt a mixture of fear and hope. We were standing on the precipice of something monumental, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to jump. As we wandered through the park, I felt a strange mix of nostalgia and heartache enveloping us. The towering oak tree where we used to play stood before us, its branches swaying gently in the breeze, but it seemed smaller somehow, as if it had shrunk under the weight of our shared past. I stared at it, memories flooding my mind like a tidal wave. Do you remember how we used to climb to the very top? I asked, a hint of a smile creeping onto my face as I glanced at Ben. His expression was distant, eyes fixed on that very tree, but I could see a flicker of recognition. Yeah, I do. You were always braver than me. He chuckled softly, but it lacked the warmth I hoped to hear. We moved closer, and I reached out to touch the rough bark, feeling the familiar texture beneath my fingertips. It was comforting in a way, yet it also reminded me of how much had changed. I can still hear us laughing, like it was just yesterday, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, those were good times, Ben replied, his voice tinged with a bittersweet edge. Before everything changed. The weight of his words hung heavily between us, an unspoken acknowledgement of the tragedy that had driven us apart. As we continued to walk, I tried to push aside the memories of that fateful day, the echoes of sirens and tears threatening to drown out the laughter we once shared. Do you think we can ever go back to those moments? I asked, longing for the innocence we had lost. Ben stopped and turned to face me, his gaze piercing. I don't know, Sarah. Feels like we've both been running for so long, but maybe we can try? His voice was hesitant, as if he were testing the waters of our fragile connection. Trying is all I've ever wanted, I admitted, my heart pounding in my chest. I've missed you so much. I always hoped you'd come back. He looked away, his jaw tightening. I thought about it every day, but it was easier to stay away, easier to not face what happened. Easier? I echoed, a hint of frustration creeping into my tone. Ben, we're never going to heal if we keep avoiding the truth. We need to talk about it. He sighed, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture of frustration. I know. It's just, I'm not ready to dive into that yet. Not here. I nodded, sensing the emotional barrier he had built around himself. I understand, but I'm here for you, whenever you're ready. We walked in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us. Then, I felt a sudden wave of emotion, a mix of longing and sorrow. I stopped again, looking into his eyes. I wish I could take the pain away. I wish we could just forget. Ben's expression softened, and for a brief moment I could see the brother I had once known. You can't just forget, Sarah. Part of who we are now. But maybe we can learn to live with it. Do you think we'll ever be whole again? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Whole? He repeated, a hint of disbelief in his tone. I don't know if we'll ever be whole, but we can find a way to be together again. That has to count for something, right? I felt a glimmer of hope at his words, even if it was just a flicker in the vast darkness that had surrounded us for so long. Together, I echoed, feeling warmth spread in my chest. I can work with that. Ben smiled, but it was a fragile smile, as if he feared it might shatter at any moment. Let's take it one step at a time, okay? Okay, I replied, the word feeling like a promise. As we continued to walk, I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath his stoic exterior, Ben was still wrestling with demons of his own. There was a distance in his gaze, a flicker of something that suggested he was still fighting battles I couldn't see. Hey, I said softly, trying to draw him back from wherever his mind had wandered. You know I'm here for you, right? No matter what? He met my eyes, and for a moment it felt as though a bridge was forming between us, fragile but present. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, and I promise I'll try to open up. Just give me some time. Time was both a comfort and a burden, but as we walked side by side, I felt a sense of renewal blossoming between us. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to the laughter that had once filled our lives. The air was thick with nostalgia as Ben and I approached our childhood home. It stood there, a shadow of its former self, but still radiating the warmth of countless memories. As we crossed the threshold, the familiar scent of old wood and lingering hints of my mother's cooking enveloped us, pulling at the frayed edges of my heart. It feels so different, I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. Ben nodded, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for the ghosts of our past. Yeah, it's smaller than I remember, replied, voice heavy with emotion. The walls were adorned with faded photographs and peeling paint, but they held the essence of our family, laughter, love, and the painful silence that followed our tragedy. We moved through the house, each room a portal to another time. The living room, once vibrant with life, now felt like a museum of our memories. I paused by the fireplace where we used to gather on cold winter nights, wrapped in blankets and sharing stories that seemed to stretch into eternity. "You remember the time we built that ridiculous fort in here?" I asked, a smile creeping across my face. Ben chuckled, his eyes lighting up for a brief moment. "And you insisted on using all the cushions from Mom's favorite couch. She was so mad," he said, shaking his head at the memory. But then, laughter faded as quickly as it had come, placed by the weight of what we had lost. The silence that followed was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Let's see if there are any old photos left," I suggested, hoping to shift the mood. We made our way to the hallway, where a collection of frames hung on the wall. Dust coated the glass, but I could still see the smiling faces of our family frozen in time. I reached for one that caught my eye, a picture from our last birthday together. "Look at us here," I said, holding it up. We were so happy. Ben took the photo from my hands, his thumb tracing the edges. "Yeah, I remember that day. You wanted that ridiculous cake shaped like a dinosaur," said, a hint of a smile breaking through his somber expression. "Mom was so creative. She always knew how to make our birthdays special." As he reminisced, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. "I wish things could go back to how they were," I admitted, my voice trembling. "Before everything happened." Ben's gaze turned serious, and he sighed, placing the photo back in its frame. "Me too. We can't change the past, Sarah. We have to face it, together." Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded. "I just feel so lost sometimes, like I failed everyone." Fess. My voice cracked, and I could hear the pain lacing through my words. If I had only done something different. Ben stepped closer, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. "You didn't fail anyone. We were kids, Sarah. We did the best we could. I didn't protect them either," he said, his voice breaking slightly. I ran away, thinking it would help, but it only made everything worse. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken pain. "What if we could forgive ourselves?" I suggested hesitantly, the thought both terrifying and liberating. "Maybe that's the first step." Ben looked into my eyes, and for a moment I saw a flicker of hope. "I want to, but it's hard. There's so much I've hidden from you, so much I need to unpack." "Then let's unpack it together," I urged, my heart racing. "We're still family, Ben. We can face this." He took a deep breath, and I could see the conflict swirling within him. "Okay. But first, let's look for more photos," he said, attempting to change the subject, though I sensed he wasn't quite ready to dive into the depths of his pain just yet. As we sifted through boxes and drawers, we came across more snapshots of our childhood, moments frozen in time that brought both joy and sorrow. Each image was a reminder of what we had lost, but also of what we could reclaim. In that moment, a flicker of unity sparked between us, a promise that we would face our past together, no matter how painful it may be. As we made our way through the familiar streets of our childhood, a peculiar blend of nostalgia and anxiety washed over me. Ben and I hadn't ventured beyond the park yet, and this new expedition felt both exhilarating and daunting. First stop was at Jenna's house. She had been our neighbor and a close friend back in the day. As we approached her front porch, I could feel the weight of unspoken words hovering between us. "Do you think she'll remember us?" Ben asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I shrugged, trying to mask my own trepidation. "I hope so. It's been a long time." As I knocked on the door, my heart raced. The sound was almost deafening in the silence that surrounded us. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, revealing Jenna, now a woman with a warm smile but the same bright eyes I remembered. "Ben, Sarah, oh my goodness, it's been ages," she exclaimed, pulling us into a tight embrace. I felt a rush of warmth envelop me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the reality of how much we had lost along the way. We settled into her cozy living room, surrounded by pictures that spoke of a life lived fully, while ours felt like a series of interrupted chapters. Jenna poured us some tea, her laughter filling the space, as she recounted silly stories from our childhood. "Remember the time we tried to build that treehouse and it ended up collapsing?" she chuckled, her eyes sparkling with mirth. "Yeah, and we spent the whole afternoon hiding from your dad because we thought we'd get in trouble," replied, feeling a smile tug at my lips. But as the laughter faded, Caught a glimpse of Ben staring out the window, lost in thought. I nudged him gently. "You okay?" He nodded slowly, though his eyes betrayed him. "Just remembering." After a while, Jenna's expression shifted. "It's good to see you both together again. I know things have been hard since everything happened." Ben shifted in his seat, a shadow crossing his face. "Yeah, it's been tough. We've missed a lot." Jenna leaned forward, her eyes filled with empathy. "You know, I always felt like you two needed to talk about it. Not just about the past, but really talk. It's okay to feel angry or sad." Her words hung in the air, and Ben's jaw tightened. "I don't know if we're ready for that," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you don't have to be completely ready," Jenna suggested softly. "Sometimes, you just need to start somewhere." I glanced at Ben, whose face was a mask of conflict. "What do you think?" I asked him, hoping to draw him out of his shell. I think I've been avoiding it for too long," finally admitted, his voice shaky. "There's so much I've kept inside, and it's like a weight I can't carry anymore." "Then let it out," Jenna encouraged gently. "You don't have to do it all at once. Just take it one step at a time." We continued to talk for a while, the conversation shifting back to lighter memories. But I sensed Ben's internal struggle. As we left Jenna's, I turned to him. "Are you okay?" He hesitated, glancing back at the house. "You know, she's right about one thing. I've been running from my feelings, from my past. I thought if I didn't talk about it, it would somehow go away." "Maybe it's time to face it together," I suggested, feeling a flicker of hope. "Yeah, together." He sighed, but I could tell he was still wrestling with something deeper. As we walked to the next place, I felt the weight of unspoken words lingering in the air, a reminder of how much we still had to process. Our next stop was a small cafe where we'd spent countless afternoons sharing dreams and secrets. As we settled at a table, the familiar aroma of coffee surrounded us, but I couldn't shake the gravity of the moment. "Do you remember when we used to talk about our futures?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. Ben smiled faintly. "Yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut, and you wanted to be a writer." "And look at us now," I said with a soft laugh, but my heart ached at the irony. As we sipped our drinks, I decided it was time to gently push for more honesty. "Ben, I know we're both carrying a lot of pain. I can feel it." He looked up, his face serious. "I've been thinking about that too. I want to help others who've gone through similar things, to make sense of my pain by supporting them. But there's something I haven't told you yet." "What is it?" I asked, my pulse quickening. He swallowed hard, gaze distant. "I don't know if I'm ready to share everything yet, but I feel like I'm on the brink of something important. Something I need to confront." "I'm here for you, whatever it is," I said, reaching across the table to grasp his hand. He gave a slight nod, but the tension in his expression lingered. As the conversation shifted again, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only scratching the surface of our shared pain, and that the real work was yet to come. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over our childhood park, Ben and I sat on a weathered bench, the air thick with nostalgia. The laughter of children echoed in the distance, a stark reminder of the innocence we had lost. It was in this moment that I turned to him, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Do you think we should do something to honor Mom and Dad?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ben looked at me, his brow furrowed in thought. "Like what? A memorial?" "Maybe." I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. I was thinking more along the lines of organizing an event, something that brings people together, friends, family, everyone who loved them. He nodded slowly, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. That could be a way to heal, not just for us, but for everyone. The idea took root in my mind, blossoming into something that felt almost tangible. We could gather those who shared in our grief, create a space for healing, and perhaps even find a sense of closure for ourselves. What if we call it a celebration of life? We can share stories, remember the good times. "I like that," Ben replied, a small smile breaking through his earlier somberness. "Feels hopeful." The plan began to take shape over the next few days. We threw ourselves into the preparations, each detail becoming a thread in the tapestry of our shared past. We met with old friends who had known our parents, rekindling connections we had both neglected over the years. Remember how Dad used to grill in the backyard every summer? I reminisced one afternoon as we sat at a cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee surrounding us. Ben chuckled softly, his gaze distant as memories washed over him. And he would always burn the burgers. We'd end up eating hot dogs instead. Those were the days, I sighed, feeling the weight of nostalgia settle heavily between us. It's nice to laugh again. As we continued planning, the event morphed into something bigger than just a tribute. It became a mission. We wanted to create a space where others could also share their stories, a safe haven for those grappling with loss. I think this could really help people, I said one evening as we reviewed the guest list. It's not just about us. Yeah, I want to help, Ben said, his expression serious. I've thought about how I could turn my pain into something meaningful. As he spoke, I noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, an intensity that hinted at deeper thoughts. It was as if he was wrestling with feelings he hadn't yet articulated. But before I could pry further, he quickly changed the subject. Let's focus on the logistics, he suggested, pulling out a notepad. We need a venue, food, and maybe some speakers. The days flowed into one another, and with each passing moment, our bond strengthened. But I could sense that Ben was still grappling with something beneath the surface, a shadow that loomed over our planning. During one late-night brainstorming session, as we pored over the details, I caught him staring out the window, lost in thought. Hey, what's going on? I asked gently, breaking the silence. You seem distant. Ben sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's just, this feels monumental, you know? I want it to be perfect, but there's something I need to tell you. My heart raced at his words. What is it? He hesitated, his voice wavering. I don't want to hold anything back anymore. I've kept things from you, and I think it's time to be honest. Ben, whatever it is, you can tell me, I urged, leaning closer. I will. I just need to find the right moment. With that, he fell silent again, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words between us. As we continued to prepare for the event, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something significant, both in our plans for the memorial and in our relationship. Just promise me one thing, I said, breaking the tension. No more secret, okay? He met my gaze, a flicker of understanding passing between us. Okay, no more secret. But as the event drew nearer, I sensed that Ben's unspoken truth would soon rise to the surface, a revelation that could change everything we had started to rebuild. The day of the event arrived, and I could feel the weight of anticipation thick in the air. With every step I took toward the park, memories of our childhood flooded my mind, days spent laughing under the sun, running through the grass, and dreaming of a future that felt so far away now. The square was alive with people, friends, and family gathering to honor our parents, but a sense of dread clung to me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to unfold. As I stood near the makeshift stage, I watched the crowd. People were smiling, sharing stories, and exchanging hugs, but I noticed Ben standing slightly apart, his gaze fixed on the ground. He looked lost in thought, and I could see the turmoil brewing beneath his calm exterior. I wanted to reach out, pull him back into the warmth of the moment, but I sensed he was grappling with something deeper. Hey, I said, stepping closer. You okay? He looked up, his eyes meeting mine, and for a brief moment I could see the flicker of fear mixed with determination. I hope I can get through this, replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I have something important to say. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, I reassured him, squeezing his arm gently. You're not alone in this. Ben nodded. The tension in his shoulders didn't ease. As the event began, the atmosphere shifted from anxiety to celebration. People took turns sharing their memories of our parents, their laughter mingling with tears of remembrance. I felt a swell of gratitude for the community that surrounded us, yet my heart ached for the unspoken weight that loomed over my brother. Finally, it was Ben's turn to speak. He stepped up to the microphone, adjusting it nervously. The crowd quieted, their eyes fixed on him. I stood a few feet away, holding my breath, hoping he would find the strength to share what had been weighing on him. Thank you all for being here today, began, his voice quavering slightly. This means so much to us. Paused, taking a deep breath, and I could see the fight in him as he gathered his thoughts. Growing up, Sarah and I shared a bond that was unbreakable. We had our adventures, our dreams, and our family. His voice faltered, and I could see the pain etched on his face. But after the tragedy, everything changed. I lost my way, and I know I hurt Sarah in the process. The crowd shifted, a collective murmur of concern rippling through them. I felt my heart race, sensing he was about to delve into something profound, something that could change everything. After the accident, I was so lost. I didn't know how to cope with the grief. I ended up joining a support group for people who lost loved ones, and it became my refuge, confessed, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I wanted to help others, to give them a voice because I felt so voiceless myself. I could feel the tension in the air, a palpable silence as he continued. But I never wanted to tell you, Sarah. I was ashamed. I thought you'd blame me for not being there when we needed each other the most. Ben, you don't have to feel that way. I called out, my voice breaking. We were both hurting. We lost everything together. He met my gaze, his expression a mix of gratitude and sorrow, and that's why I'm here today. I can't keep hiding. I need to share this with everyone. He took a deep breath, and I felt the crowd lean in, hanging on to his every word. I have something to confess. The guilt I felt, it was suffocating. I didn't just lose my parents, I lost my way. I made choices that took me further from you, Sarah. Choices that almost destroyed me. My heart pounded in my chest as I searched his face, desperate to understand. I felt the weight of his words, the vulnerability he was exposing to everyone. What was he about to say that could change everything? As the event drew to a close, the air thickened with emotion, a palpable tension hanging between Ben and me. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us, an anticipation that made my heart race. As Ben stepped up to the microphone, his face was illuminated by the soft glow of the stage lights. I watched him take a deep breath, the way his shoulders squared as he focused on the crowd before him. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice steady yet tinged with an undercurrent of vulnerability. Growing up, Sarah and I shared a lot of wonderful moments. I think of the laughter we had, the games we played, and the dreams we built together. But I also think of the day our lives changed forever. I held my breath as he continued, calling the accident that had shattered our family. It was a day etched in my memory. Hearing him speak of it brought forth a fresh wave of grief. After that day, I was lost. I felt like I had to escape, to run away from the pain. But running didn't solve anything. He paused, his gaze drifting from the crowd to the ground, as if searching for the right words buried in the earth. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the way he wrestled with the truth he was about to unveil. The air felt thick with unspoken words. I want to share something with you all, he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. After the accident, I found a group that helped me cope. It became my refuge, a place where I could finally breathe. But I kept it a secret from everyone I loved. A hushed silence fell over the crowd, and I felt my heart race. What was he trying to say? I leaned forward, desperate to hear more. Being part of that group, he continued, I learned to help others who were suffering just like us. Gave me a purpose, something to cling to in the dark times. But it also made me feel like a coward. I was ashamed that I sought help while abandoning our family. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. I thought I could save myself by helping others, but I neglected the one thing that mattered most, my own family. Ben, I whispered, my voice trembling, you weren't abandoning us. You were trying to survive. I felt the tears welling up in my eyes, and I blinked them away, desperate to stay composed. He shook his head, his expression conflicted. You don't understand. I made decisions that pushed us further apart. I didn't just lose our parents. I lost you too, and I didn't know how to come back. His voice cracked, and I could see the pain etched on his face. I felt guilty for not being there when you needed me most. I thought if I kept running, I could outrun the guilt. Suddenly, the truth he had been holding back burst forth like a dam breaking. The group I was a part of, they taught me a lot, but they also made me face my own demons. I was involved in things that went against everything our parents stood for. I was ashamed to tell you, Sarah, because I thought you'd hate me for it. I took a step closer, feeling the weight of his confession. Ben, I could never hate you. We've both been through so much, but you need to share this with me. We can face it together." He nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. "After the accident, I thought I was protecting you by keeping my distance, but all I did was create a chasm between us." He took a deep breath, the emotion thick in the air. "I want to be honest with you now, not just about my past, but about my intentions moving forward. I want to help others, yes, but I also want to rebuild what we lost. I want to make things right between us." Crowd began to stir, a wave of understanding and compassion washing over them. I could feel their empathy enveloping us, uniting us in our shared grief. But beneath that, there was a tension, a lingering uncertainty about what lay ahead. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," I said, my voice steady now. "You're not alone anymore, Ben. We never were meant to be apart." His expression softened, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm ready to work for it." In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of our past and the promise of healing, I knew we were on the brink of something transformative. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but we were finally ready to face the shadows together. As the event came to a close, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. The crowd surrounding us was filled with familiar faces, each one offering a mixture of sympathy and understanding. They approached Ben and me one by one, sharing their own stories of loss and resilience. I watched as Ben engaged with each person, his eyes shining with a depth of emotion I had rarely seen before. "Your words really touched me," one woman said, her voice thick with tears. "I lost my brother last year, and hearing you speak about your experiences made me feel less alone. Thank you for sharing." Ben nodded, his expression softening. "You're not alone. We all carry our burdens, but sharing them can lighten the load," he replied, his voice steady yet filled with compassion. I could see how much it meant to him to connect with others who had suffered similar tragedy. As the stories continued to unfold, a sense of community enveloped us, transforming the pain we had shared into a collective healing experience. I stepped back for a moment, allowing the warmth of the gathering to wash over me. It was strange. Pain had brought us together, yet here we were, finding solace in one another's company. "Sarah," a familiar voice called out. It was our childhood friend, Mark, who had always been a source of laughter and light during our darkest days. "Can you come over here for a second?" I turned to see him waving me over, a bright smile on his face. "Look at all these people. It's amazing how your brother's honesty has sparked this connection," he said. "You both have a gift for sharing your story." "Thanks, Mark," I replied, feeling a swell of pride for Ben. "I think we're just finally starting to understand our own pain, and it's helping us connect with others." Mark nodded knowingly. "Sometimes it takes a tragedy to show us what really matters. You two are doing something beautiful here." As I glanced back at Ben, I noticed him laughing with a group of people who had come up to him. Their faces were animated, sharing anecdotes from our childhood. The tension that had weighed heavily on him seemed to be lifting, and it made me smile to see him so engaged. "Hey, come here," Ben called out to me, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Remember that time we tried to build a treehouse, but instead, we ended up building a fort that collapsed on us?" I laughed, shaking my head. "How could I forget? We spent the whole afternoon covered in leaves and dirt." "Exactly, and we swore we'd never try that again." Dead, his laughter infectious. It was moments like this that reminded me of the bond we shared, one that had been strained but not broken by the years apart. I walked over to him, feeling the warmth of nostalgia wrap around us like a comforting blanket. But just as the laughter faded, I saw a flicker of something in Ben's eyes, a hint of the turmoil that still lingered beneath the surface. I pulled him aside, away from the crowd. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, my voice low and concerned. "I'm good. Just a lot to process, you know?" he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't expect this many people to show up. Feels overwhelming, but in a good way." "Yeah, it does. But I can see it in your eyes, Ben. There's still something weighing on you." "Press gently." He sighed, looking out over the crowd, expression distant. "I just hope they understand that sharing our pain doesn't mean it's all gone. It's still there, lurking beneath the surface." I nodded, wanting to reassure him. "We'll figure it out together." We can face it, just like we faced everything else. Remember what we said about support? He looked at me, gaze steady. You're right. Thank you, Sarah, for being here, understanding. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by the laughter and joy of our friends, but also enveloped in our own silence, a shared understanding that our journey was far from over. As the event drew to a close, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me. The laughter, the tears, the stories shared, they all formed a tapestry of connection, weaving us closer together. I turned to Ben, who was now surrounded by friends, and I felt a sense of hope blooming in my chest. We did it, didn't we? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We did, he replied, his smile radiant, yet I sensed the lingering shadows in his eyes. As we embraced, I felt a silent agreement pass between us. We were ready to face whatever came next, together. As the event wrapped up, the energy in the air was electric. People mingled, sharing their stories, their laughter mingling with tears. I watched as Ben moved from group to group, his face alight with an intensity I hadn't seen in years. The weight of our shared past seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. It was as if we had finally stepped out of the shadows that had loomed over us for so long. Hey, can we talk for a minute? Ben beckoned me to a quieter corner of the park, away from the crowd. His expression was serious, and a flicker of anxiety crossed his face. My heart raced, half in anticipation, half in dread. What more could there be to uncover? Sure, I replied, my voice steady despite the chaos of emotions swirling inside me. What's on your mind? He took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized all too well from our childhood. I've been thinking about what we can do next. I want to do something meaningful, something that honors Mom and Dad. What do you mean? Asked, my curiosity piqued. I think we should start a foundation, he said, his eyes lighting up with the idea. Foundation in their memory to help others who've gone through similar tragedies. We could provide support groups, resources, anything that could help someone like us. I could feel my heart swelling with pride. That's a beautiful idea, Ben. I think they would have loved that. I paused, contemplating the impact it could have. But it's a big undertaking. Are you sure you want to dive into something like this right now? I am, he affirmed, his voice steady. I want to channel this pain into something positive. I want to help others heal, like I've been trying to heal myself. A silence hung between us, filled with unspoken thoughts. Could see Ben wrestling with something deeper, something that lurked just beneath the surface of his newfound clarity. And what about you? He asked, breaking the quiet. What do you want? I hesitated, searching for the right words. I want to be with you again, to share more moments like this. I want us to build something together. I felt the weight of my confession linger in the air, the vulnerability of laying my heart bare. Ben stepped closer, a flicker of something akin to relief in his eyes. I've missed you, Sarah, more than I can say. I want to make sure I'm ready for this. There's still so much about my past I haven't shared with you. Like what? I pressed gently, sensing that he was holding back once more. He looked away, brow furrowed. There's a part of my journey that I've kept hidden, even from myself. I thought I could manage it alone, but I realize now that it's been weighing me down. Whatever it is, you can tell me, I urged, stepping closer to him. We're in this together, remember? Took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I didn't just join a support group after the accident. I became involved with the people I was helping. I wanted to escape, forget the pain, and that led me to places I'm not proud of. His confession hit me like a punch in the gut. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I got drawn into a world of substance abuse, thinking I could drown my sorrows, he admitted, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I didn't want to face the truth of what happened to us. I thought if I could just forget, everything would be okay. The weight of his words fell heavily between us. I reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. Ben, you don't have to carry that anymore. You've come so far. Look at what you've accomplished today. You're helping people. I know, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I need you to understand that I wasn't just helping others. I was trying to help myself in the wrong way. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be someone who makes a difference. You already are, I assured him. You're here, you're present, and you're fighting for something that matters. We can face this together, just like we're doing now. In that moment, the air between us shifted. I could see the determination in Ben's eyes, the resolve to break free from the chains of his past. "I love you, Sarah," he said, his voice trembling with sincerity. "I always have. I want to make this right. I want to be a brother you can be proud of." "I love you too, Ben," I replied, tears streaming down my cheeks. "You have nothing to prove. We're in this together now, and I believe in you." As we embraced, the warmth of our connection enveloped us, promise of new beginnings. The foundation we would create together stood not just as a tribute to our parents, but as a testament to our resilience and the bond we were rebuilding. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of hope, knowing that we were finally on the path to healing. Together, picture this. You're just going about your day, lost in your phone, and suddenly, everything changes. Car out of control, tires screeching on the pavement, impact just seconds away. But at the last second, a stranger jumps in, risking everything to save you. He falls beside you, hurt, and in the middle of the chaos, he drops a bombshell that flips your world upside down. Now think about it. Who is this guy? Why did he do this for you? And what does he know that you don't? Want to find out what happens next? Click on the video popping up on your screen and get ready to uncover secrets that could change everything you thought you knew about your own story. Don't miss it.